For our trip, I'm going to ask everybody for the duration to please remain seated, as we are, even though we are in passenger cars, it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride as we go along. The tracks are a little bit like that. So for the duration, please keep your seats. There are restrooms in most cars. You can look to your car host, whoever that may be, to ask for directions to which side of the car the restroom is on. If you do get up to walk to the restroom, just make sure that you try and move along with the swaying of the cars. So make sure you have a handle on the seats as you go through so that you don't fall. We don't want that for anybody. Secondly, if you do have, if you're sitting next to a window and you would like it open, I think it might be a bit chilly today. You can open the windows. They are require a little bit of elbow grease to get open. But if you have it open, just make sure that you do not have anything outside of the car. The windows in some cases date back to the 1920s, which means that they can be a little unsteady. So we'll be getting started shortly, everybody. I'll start talking to you again very shortly. Thank you. Okay, good morning once again, everybody, and welcome aboard our East Stroudsburg excursion. We're about to get ready on our way to East Stroudsburg, or begin our trip. Once again, for those of you that are new on board, I'll give a safety briefing real quick. For the duration of the trip, I'm going to ask you to please keep your seats. If you do need to use the restroom, please ask your car host which direction or which side of the car the restroom is open. So you can use either one, and there we go on our excursion, or starting our way. So we'll be there in a couple hours, hopefully. Like I said, if you do get up to use the restroom, please be careful walking down the aisle, as the car might be a little unsteady. Secondly, if anybody has their window open, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that you try to keep everything inside the car at all times. These windows, in some cases, date to the 1920s, which means they can be a bit unsteady. We don't want anybody to get hurt today. I'll be pointing some stuff out on either side of the car throughout our journey to East Stroudsburg today. If you look on the to my right, and I'm facing the rear of the train, the side that has the marketplace at Steamtown, the mall at Steamtown, that is going to be the north side, and I'll refer to as the for the duration of the trip. The opposite side facing our yard is the south side of the cars. So I'll be pointing things out as we go along through Scranton and out through the Poconos. So sit back, enjoy the ride, and see you in East Stroudsburg soon, in a couple hours. The reason we're stopping is not because we're at East Stroudsburg. We do have a switch ahead of us that we have to get because we're the first train out of town this morning. So one of our train crew members is going to be getting off the train to flip that switch to get us on the right track, and we'll be heading out of town shortly after that. All 4 passenger cars are known as commuter cars for the Central Railroad of New Jersey. They vary in age, with the oldest one being the first one behind the entrance, the number 303, or the combination car. That car was built in 1923 by American Car and Foundry. The 3 cars behind that, going towards the end of the train, were all built around 1925. So most of our cars in the collection here at Steamtown are approaching 100 years of age. These cars were used from the 1920s up until about the early 1970s, first by Central Railroad of New Jersey, and then very early on by New Jersey Transit, for those of you that are in New Jersey. Very shortly after New Jersey Transit took over, they started rapidly modifying and replacing all of their cars with the newer versions known as Comet cars. And so these passenger commuter cars that date back to the 1920s were taken out of service and went around the country to various tourist lines and historic museums. The Central Railroad of New Jersey had so many of these cars, over hundreds of them, that you can really find them all over the place in the country to this day. The 2 engines that are pulling us today, we have 514, our nickel plate road engine, a GP9 built in 1958, leading us out of Scranton. And behind that engine that will be leading us westbound as we head back from East Stroudsburg later today is Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western number 663. That engine is an F3 engine built by EMD in 1948. That one has the distinction of being one of the oldest operating F3s in the country. There are pretty much 2 of them that are operative, and both of them are here at Steamtown. We do have a partner group that works with us, and they own both of those engines, number 663 and 664, and they operate for excursions for us. Good timing on my part, as you heard those 2 blasts of the horns, and that means we'll be getting back on our way. Coming up on the north side of the cars, you can take a look at how close the Lackawanna Railroad, which tracks we are still on, came to the city of Scranton. Now, the city of Scranton was arguably actually developing around the Lackawanna Railroad, as the railroad was one of the first things in this area to serve for first iron furnaces, and then later for anthracite mining in the region. So you can see just how close the downtown area of Scranton is. The Lackawanna Railroad is going to be the theme or the trend on this particular railroad, as these tracks were owned and operated by them for their entire history, up until after the merger in 1960 with the Erie Railroad, and eventually being inherited by Conrail and later Steamtown.
Love that diesel rail sound. Love that diesel rail sound. Oh.
Feature stopping plate for each of the tracks and
Coming up here on this side of the train is the famous Lackawanna Station, now known as the Radisson Station Hotel, formerly the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Station here in Scranton.
So coming up on the north side of the cars, folks, as you can actually see the Radisson Hotel, formerly the Lackawanna Station. The station was built in 1908, still very much intact, although it sees our trains pass on a regular basis. The last train to actually serve the station was back in January of 1970. If you ever have the time to go in there, I definitely recommend it. It's worth a visit. They still have the Tiffany stained glass ceiling that was originally put in, the Italian marble, and some of the beautiful other furnishings that the Lackawanna Railroad put in that station as incentive for passengers to keep coming back. Scranton was considered the centerpiece of the Lackawanna Railroad, and so they tried to make it as beautiful as possible. Coming up once again on the north side of the cars, you'll be able to see the former Scranton family mansion. Now, the Scranton family has not lived there for some time, but they actually donated it to the University of Scranton, which is also passing us on the north side of the cars. The university is a longtime feature of the city of Scranton. This college dates back to about 1888. It was first founded as St. Thomas's College. It was later changed to the University in Scranton around 1938. On the south side of the cars, you'll see that we have a valley next to the tracks. At the bottom of that valley, we have a river that's going to pretty much follow us up until about Gouldsboro, Pennsylvania. That particular river is known as Roaring Brook. Right now, it sits about 70 to 80 feet beneath the tracks, but there was a time in its history that it actually lived up to its name and was quite close in flooding up to the tracks that we're sitting on. Not quite that catastrophic, but pretty close. And that was about 1955 with two separate hurricanes.
Not again.
What happened?
What's that? Hurricanes.
No, I mean just now.
Oh, we got a switch.
Oh.
It happens.
Buffalo, New York. But the name train that was famous on this line was known as the BB Snow.
Okay.
For a trip out of Scranton, we're going to actually be leaving the boundaries of the city, and you'll see what the Lackawanna Railroad was working with the geography or the lay of the land in this part of the city. On the north side, we have a cliff face. On the south side, we have another set of tracks. And if you could believe it, there actually is some space to squeeze in a third set of tracks in this section of Scranton. The Lackawanna Railroad had to really work with whatever real estate they had, and so they actually put this in purposefully. There was a little bit more space in between us and the valley beneath us on the south side, but after Hurricane Connie and Hurricane Diane came around 1955, the flooding has actually worn away what remained of the space in between that land and the railroad.
That is close. Thank goodness I don't have the window open all the way. See what I mean, Adam? Places where
better on that side. We have the track.
I know, but there are places where see what I mean? There are places where the rock cut.
Only here though. Once you get on the main line,
Yep. Oh boy.
Now, Nayog is actually the other name of the Roaring Brook. It is the Lenape nickname or name for the river. Shortly after we pass by the gorge on the north side, we're going to be going into one of two tunnels. So we'll be getting dark on the train very shortly.
Ooh.
So you can see Nayog Gorge on the north side of the train and the Roaring Brook flowing underneath us. And right about now, you'll be able to see the first car going into the tunnel, so be prepared for the train to get dark.
Oh, it isn't really that dark.
For the Nayog tunnels, the one that we just went through is actually the older one, bored in around 1856. That was first bored by the Lackawanna when it was first opening up the line through the Poconos. The second tunnel on the south side was built or bored in 1905. That particular tunnel was actually taken out of service in 1955 after Hurricane Diane actually flooded most of the region. The flooding and damage was so significant that the water from the Roaring Brook actually skipped over the bank on the north side and went straight through the tunnels, both of them. So there was some irreversible damage done to the southern portal, and the Lackawanna Railroad decided rather than restoring it to service, they would rather just take it out of service and put 2 tracks in as opposed to the 3 that were originally there.
They're going to start to speed up. Huh. Signal gantry. Good foot.
On the south side of the cars, you can see an apartment complex. Now, that's not important itself, but the actual building that's now housing or being repurposed, that's actually known as the Petersburg Silk Mill. One of the notable facts about the Silk Mill is during World War II, they actually assisted in the war effort by making parachutes for paratroopers. And some of those paratroopers and those parachutes would actually be used on the D-Day and the Normandy landings in 1944.
Here we go. Now that we're out of the rock cut area, it's time to hit the gas. Oof. Smoke.
Although the trend exists that the Lackawanna Railroad actually existed in most of this line, as we get a little bit closer to Dunmore, Pennsylvania, which is right next to Scranton, Dunmore actually had 3 different railroads, including the Lackawanna, the Erie Railroad, and the Laurel Line. Now, the Lackawanna in Wyoming, otherwise known as the Laurel Line, was actually a much smaller railroad, known as interurban. The Erie Railroad had a different presence. If you look on the north side, we just passed a very large orange building. That building actually served as the car shops for the Erie Railroad. That operated up until about 1960, and then after the Erie merged with the Lackawanna Railroad around that same year, they actually took it out of service and resumed building passenger cars or freight cars and doing other work in other shops around the Northeast.
We just passed under a highway. Don't know what highway it is up there. Oh wow. That's quite a sight, a vintage bridge on top of a modern bridge.
reservoir and the facilities that were built around it was actually opened up in the early 1800s and the around 1854. Now this reservoir and a number of other water features as we continue going east were actually used to provide water services for the city of Scranton. The water services extend almost out to Gouldsboro, Pennsylvania, maybe even a little bit further than that. Part of the reason why the Scrantons actually had to keep searching for water is that by around 1876, much of the Poconos had actually been readily deforested. And so water retention was greatly affected. They were not able to actually have as much water being absorbed into the groundwater for wells or anything like that. And so the Scrantons had to keep extending the water features, the water processes, the way they got water to the city, as far out as Gouldsboro to keep getting the city, or facilitating for people to live in the city of Scranton. Reservoir number 7 is actually named after a gravity plane. Now, gravity plane is pretty simple in terms of railroading. Effectively what it is right before the times of effective engines, you would have a large hill. You would actually pull a loaded freight car or some sort of passenger car up to the top of the hill, and then just as the name implies, you would actually let gravity do the job on the downslope. It's almost like a roller coaster, maybe not as exciting as a roller coaster, but that was the very early form of railroading in this country. A gravity plane did exist on the southern side of the reservoir, and that's how it eventually got its name.
Yet another highway.
In this section of our trip, we're actually passing by a location known as Winton. At one point, the Lackawanna Railroad had a rail yard in this general vicinity. They would use it to actually organize the freight coming in and out of the city of Scranton, as well as going up to New York. As you can see, there's a lot of effort or a lot of construction in the area. They're actually working on replacing the 380 bridges that we see going into the city of Scranton. And lucky enough for them, we actually did have an old railroad bridge known as the Winton branch for the Lackawanna Railroad. They actually repurposed that bridge, which up until a couple of years ago was effectively abandoned. They actually are using it to gain access to the other side to the 380 bridges. So it makes everybody's lives a little bit easier so they can get that bridge activated quickly.